It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Jaguar Nation? It's your man, Tony Wiggins, with another episode of Locked On Jaguars here on a hump day on a Wednesday. And I have to let you know that today's show is brought to you by the Peacock and Williamson podcast. Brian Peacock is an NFL analyst, and Matt Williamson is a former NFL scout. And they bring all of the analytics, the team news, breaking down the rosters from every single team in the NFL around the league every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Peacock and Williamson, Monday through Friday. Great podcast. And you can make sure you subscribe to that on the Odyssey app and wherever else you get your podcast. I want to ask you guys a question, and I'm going to do it for a reason. So I'm going to first explain what it is I'm going to do. I'm always doing this to try to get somewhere, right? I want to take the time to try to figure out a creative way to explain positional value to you, as well as why you don't rest on your laurels. And what I mean by resting is this. I know everyone's excited about the season, and I often say just because you know a guy's name doesn't mean that he's going to be the guy that takes you to the Super Bowl. We become so ingrained in our own team's offense, the players, what their potential is, that sometimes I believe people confuse that familiarity with actual and they allow it to make them more optimistic than they should be about certain players. Because I came to this because I talked to someone earlier today, and they don't seem to think that this roster is as strong as even I think it is. The person I spoke was like, hey, how could you go from 1-15 to all of a sudden thinking you could possibly win the division? It couldn't just be all coaches, and it couldn't just be all scheme, and you just don't turn it over that quickly. So it made me think. Not to basically put out my own embers and the own fire that I have for the Jaguars and that you have for the Jaguars, but it made me think. I want to do an exercise. And while I was doing this exercise, I came up with two things. One, it taught me how to tell you guys about positional value. And two, it did humble me a little bit. It humbled me a little bit to make me think and understand that maybe they're not quite where they are. So here's what the exercise is. I want to name a player. I wanted to do it team-wise first. But just for the sake of today's podcast, we'll do offense and defense. I want you to name one player, not a quarterback, because we have Trevor Lawrence. So, and the reason why I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to let you do a quarterback is because of this. Everybody's happy that the Jaguars have Trevor Lawrence. I'm not going to allow that to be taken away by someone saying, give me Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, or Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to do that. I don't want you guys to take away the best addition that you have this offseason. So we're going to leave the quarterback in place. But on defense, you can do what you want, and on offense, you can do what you want. Here's the exercise. I want you to name one player at any position other than the one I said you can't. One player first on offense, and then a player on defense that you think can put the Jaguars, that you could guarantee that what they're going to do is be as good as you hope they'll be. And I mean realistically hope. And I'm not sitting here saying somebody's out here thinking, well, obviously you hope that they can go to the Super Bowl and win a title. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about win the division, make the playoffs, and be extremely relevant late in the season for year one. One player. I'm going to give you one guy that could get them there. Now, I think I know what Jaguar fans are going to do. They're going to say Travis Kelce. Because the team, one, doesn't have a tight end. We've talked about the tight end position being devoid of talent. He's the best player in the league probably at his position. And it would seem like he would be the best friend of Trevor Lawrence. I'm not going to actually dispute that or discount that. But I want you to think real hard, because that's a very good player at a position of need, and it would make the most sense. But think about this. Is the tight end that important to what the Jaguars are going to do from what you can estimate and guess? Are they that important? Are the Jaguars is getting Travis Kelce, getting him, or is it the fact that, okay, even though he's a tight end, it might not be important, Wig, he's still the best player in the league at his position. The Jags would have given their right arm and both legs to get the kid from Florida, Kyle Pitts, to go along with Trevor Lawrence. It's a little bit different because you're talking about team building and getting the best two players in the draft. But I get your point. If you want to say it's Travis Kelce, I won't argue with you. But does the addition of Travis Kelce to what they already have, does that obviously it makes you feel better that they can achieve their goals? But are you certain he's the guy that really helps this franchise get to where they want? Somebody might take a left tackle. Somebody might say, no, give me Tyreek Hill. That even though we're strong at receiver, he's too good for you to pass up, and he gives you another electrifying weapon. So there are a lot of different players that you could take. I doubt if anybody takes a running back, which goes to my point. They've shored up, one of my points anyway, they've shored up that position enough in the offseason that position is no longer one you think that you need a significant upgrade at. I don't even know who the best left tackle in the game is. Maybe it was Trent Williams, who was out there as a free agent. Don't know. But on offense, it seems like it's probably self-explanatory that everyone goes for the tight end. But if you think about any other position other than that one, you'll now understand that you have to realize that they haven't arrived yet. If you think you go grab a left tackle, then that's the guy that you would need to go make a deep run into the playoffs. Then you have to understand that they haven't arrived with Cam Robinson, and you have to understand that they still got a ways to go until they know that Walker Little's their guy. If you went wide receiver at a position, if that's the way you went, you put a player at wide receiver, it'll tell you, even though you love their receiver group, and I do too, that you always go for the most talented player regardless. So if you say a Tyreek Hill, who's going to argue against it? I'm not going to argue if you say you want Tyreek Hill on this team, that one player. But it gives you the lesson and it makes you understand that just because you're solid and good at a position doesn't mean that you've arrived and you can't go out and get a special player. See, when I say that you don't go grab a guy and you just don't say we can get a guy or we're okay in that area, that's exactly what I'm talking about. The fact is, when you're presented with the opportunity to go snatch one of those guys, you snatch one of them in a heartbeat. Why would you do that if you're okay at the position? Because that guy is better. And that's what these teams are going to constantly keep doing. They're not going to settle for being okay. If there's a special dude, this is why I think the Jaguars draft the way that they drafted. And this is the one thing that I feel that a lot of folks don't feel about. I don't care what that dude is on my roster. If I see that guy and I notice, independent of what I already have, he's special and he's different and he does things that other guy can't do, I'll get him. That's just it. Because you know who's going to the playoffs and win the Super Bowl? Teams that think like that. Teams that think that way. The Chiefs probably thought they were okay at quarterback. Alex Smith was a good solid NFL quarterback. Nope. You know what they said? I need better. I need special. It's what they did. They went out and got special. We're going to do the defense. I want to do the defense because I think the defense is a little more tricky. It could be, or it might just be a little bit more of the same old thing when you get to the defense. I know for me it was. It was absolutely the same old thing for me. But I want to have fun with that defense too. If you could pick one defensive player, just one guy, who would it be? I'll answer that in just a second here on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Jaguars. After I tell you about Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. So you thought I was going to say on the market right now. No, I said ever, because that's exactly what I mean. One is because it's covered in 100% chocolate. Two is because I'm working out and there's 17 or 18 powerful grams of protein packed in that good tasting bar with very little calories, very little sugar, and very little carbs, which means it works out for me. And they have 9 great flavors that they really specialize in and they focus on, other than the occasional limited time flavor. But my favorite one is the salted caramel. But if you like double chocolate, peanut butter brownie, mint brownie, raspberry, cherry, or coconut almond, then Built Bar is also available to have a flavor for you. And you can get it at BuiltBar.com with the promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your next order or your first order. That's right, Built Bar at BuiltBar.com. On Twitter, check out at @bar_built and follow along for all of the great specials and things that they have going on over at Built Bar. It's the best tasting protein bar ever, man. I don't know what you're waiting for. Get those Built Bars at BuiltBar.com. Promo code LOCKED15. All right, it's your man Wig, man, back here on a Tuesday on Locked On Jaguars, as we do every single day, Monday through Friday, here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Trying to bring some organic content, man. You know, they moved practice around today. I was scheduled to try to get out to check out the practice for you. They moved it till tomorrow, so it doesn't look like I'll be able to make that because of scheduling, obligations. But I will be able to bring you all of the information. I'll follow it as closely as I can to make sure that you guys stay abreast and stay caught up on what's going on. I'm doing a little bit of an exercise that'll help you understand team building, and it'll also help you understand the fact that the Jaguars haven't arrived. Because if they had arrived, some of these people and some of these names that you might think of adding, you probably wouldn't select. So let's move to the defensive side of the ball. I just went ahead and said that Travis Kelce, one, because he's a great player. He's one of the 10, 12 best players in the NFL, regardless of position. 2, it's a glaring hole in a position of need, and you have a young quarterback here in Jacksonville. So Travis Kelce would be a guy that would be a no-brainer. Even though it leaves something to be desired when you start thinking about this. What are they going to do with the tight end position, and are they prioritizing that position? I think if you have a special player like Kelce or Pitts or somebody with these special qualities, even a Darren Waller, I do believe the Jaguars would implement that in whatever way needed to be implemented to get the ball into that great player's hands. But it shows you that they're not going to force it. They're not going to just go out and get a tight end if he's not special and change up everything that they're doing just to make sure that they can get a tight end into their offense. You can tell by the way they're approaching it. It's like if we come up on something, fine. If we don't, we're just not going to force it with anybody. But on defense, it's a little bit different. First year, Joe Cullen, first-year defense coordinator. You know how you want to play. You go into a 3-4. Name that player. Who is it? No-brainer selection right up front is Aaron Donald. One, because he's probably the best defensive lineman I've ever seen in my lifetime. He's unblockable. And even though he's probably more suited for a 4-3, he's been in a 3-4 now for a number of years, and they just figure out a way to play Aaron Donald and get him on the field. So Aaron Donald is probably the runaway selection, even though at this point, defensive line probably isn't the biggest need on that side of the ball, but it doesn't matter what the need is. He's just that good, right? So if you'd add Aaron Donald, remember, you have to play against guys like Aaron Donald. So if you'd add him to your team, that means that you got to block him when you play him. So the reason why that's important is this. It shows you that you haven't arrived. The same guy that you got to go add to your ball club, that you would add to your ball club right now, regardless of position, even though it's not a position of need, is the same guy you're going to figure out how to block when you're playing. And that team has him on their team. You need to find your guys like that in order to be able to compete and get as far as you think you can go if you're a Jaguar fan. That's the point. 2, you just take great player over position of need. Now, if you think back to need with the Jaguars right now, you would think that they covered everything in the draft and they've got pieces here and there. Would you go for another edge rusher? Would it be a guy who can stand up that you know for a fact, that you know, you're not guessing and you're not hoping that Caleb can come around or that Josh Allen could come around? Would you go for a guy right now that you know for a fact will get you 14 sacks? And who are those guys right now around the NFL? Myles Garrett is one. So would you go for Myles Garrett, even though he plays in a 4-3 and he's not really an outside linebacker? Is he too good to pass up and you just say, we'll figure it out later? Would you get Myles Garrett? Which position would it be? What player would it be? And ask yourself this, and sometimes what it'll do, it'll tell you two things. Where do you believe that this team really needs help? Where you really haven't arrived, where you're not sure if they're right good enough, or that the guy's so good it doesn't matter if you need him or not, you're just going to take him and figure it out. So you look at the need and you look at the fact that, well, maybe my subconscious tells me to go into this area and pick this guy because I know we're probably not as good in the area as I think we are. Or you're saying, I don't care about need, I want him. And when you start thinking like that, that's how, when I was talking about in the draft, what they may have been looking at. That they're 1-15. And I'm not going to sit here and worry so much about need as much as I'm going to worry about get that next guy. Get him regardless of how good he is. Regardless if he plays a position that we're not really that weak in, take him. We were 1-15. It doesn't matter. That's the point that I was trying to get to. And this is what I want you guys to see. Fred Warner would be a name that I would mention. Devin White would be a name that true guys that play true Mike linebacker in a 3-4. Those would be guys, Bobby Wagner. You would think about those guys from a schematic perspective when you're talking about who you would actually add. When you think about DBs, think about the best corners in the game. Don't get me started. I'm not going to say it because I know y'all ain't gonna agree with me, but y'all do not want number 20 back from the Rams. I know you don't, so I won't even bring it up. But you can find a real good safety in the league, maybe a Jesse Bates, someone like that plays at Cincinnati, to give yourself a true center fielder. So who would it be? Would you worry about position or would you worry about the actual player? I think you'd worry about the actual player, and I think it'd be Aaron Donald or Myles Garrett. You just take the best player, which sort of proves my point. In segment 3, I'm going to talk about this. Where are they really weak? Can we get past the sunshine and rainbows and get past all of that stuff and really look at the Jaguars and say, really, let's be honest with ourselves, outside of the tight end position? If somebody put you in a room and say, I ain't going to tell nobody what you said, you give me a secret. Tell me where you want the Jaguars to tighten themselves up in an area where it seems like everyone is thinking that they're good. I'm going to give it to you because I've been telling you for 2 years, and I'm going to do it here in segment number 3 on a Hump Day Wednesday on Locked On Jaguars. After I tell you guys about betonline.ag. Man, if you want to put your money where your mouth is and put your money and your brain together to get you some money, there's only one way you can do it, and that's BetOnline, which is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we know that NBA is off the chain because teams are winning that aren't supposed to win, and the Clippers might not make it. They're down 0-2, and the Lakers split 1-1. These little lower seeds ain't playing with these big seeds. And that's where you can get in on the action and take advantage because you're getting points to go along with that on BetOnline. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs into the playoffs. Head to the website to use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline is your online sportsbook experts. Man, it's fast and it's easy and it's where you need to go. You have to use the promo code, which is Locked On, in order to get that 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. But I'm telling you, this is the place for you to be, especially with all of these upsets going on right now in the NBA. So it's betonline.ag, promo code Locked On. All right, talking about Jaguars. If you trap people in the room and say, hey, man, give us the real. Tell us where they're weak. Obviously, the first thing you're going to hear are the tight ends. The folks are going to talk about the tight end until they actually draft one or until one of these dudes starts giving them some crazy production. Or maybe what you'll see is when the season starts is they don't really emphasize that position very much, and you might start changing your mind. But the bottom line is this. The bottom line is you guys know that a lot of our enthusiasm is based on what we hope as opposed to what we know will happen. There are some teams around the league right now, they'd be shocked and surprised if they didn't make deep runs into the playoffs. Kansas City, Cleveland, Buffalo in the AFC. Those teams believe that they're good enough to make a run at it. you're not there yet, and you can't be. And it's impossible for you as a Jaguar fan to really sit here and say that you truly believe that this team is on its way to the Super Bowl, unless you're just being a total eternal optimist. That's just not true. And it would be the rarest thing you've ever seen a team to go from 1-15 to already be contending with that kind of stuff. But we're on a different little level here. We're on a different curve. The Jaguar fans want competence, and then they want hope for the future that things are going to be okay. And they want to see the team going in and headed in the right direction and competing every single week to give themselves a chance to win. And then at some point saying, okay, we're ready to go. Because there's a natural progression to this, and it doesn't happen overnight. So what are the positions outside of the tight end position where I think offensively the Jaguars are probably not as good as they think? I'm going to give you one offense and one defense. This is my personal perspective. I've been saying for 3 years that they need to do something about the offensive line, and for 3 years, no one's decided to do anything. They did draft Walker Little this year, and that's a good thing because I think he does have a big future at left tackle. But I always thought they needed to do more. Now, Urban Meyer and George Warhop and the GM Balky, they know way more about offensive lines than me. I'm not going to sit here and pretend. But for me, I just think a team needs to be almost great on the offensive line in order to win a title. And I just don't think the Jaguars are great. And I don't know that they have a lot of guys who can be great. I just don't know if they have that. I think they have a lot of guys who are good and they have a ceiling of being good. But if they're going to get to where you want to, those guys are going to have to come together like the Temptations, man, or either somebody's going to have to elevate their play and turn into a great player where I don't really see that right now. Defensively, I think it's the linebackers. And I'm only saying this because, and that's including the edge rushers, is because I don't trust the depth at edge. The other thing is they're dependent on a lot of guys to play up to their potential. Like Josh Allen has to get back to where he was 2 years ago. Caleb Vaughn has to build upon what you saw towards the end of the year, and they're hoping that what Caleb Vaughn is going to do is, with a change of philosophy, actually do what he's good at as opposed to what they were trying to make him do last year. So there's a lot of hoping and wishing right there. They're going to hope that Joe Schobert is good enough at Mike linebacker. The only thing that I'm sure about at linebacker is Miles Jack. And there's a small question there because he's best at will. He's best at weak side linebacker, which I know you can play a 3-4 and still play one of those guys sort of the same way you play in a 4-3. But the difference is when he was playing a solid 4-3, it took them forever to put him at weak side linebacker because first the presence of Telvin Smith and then all of this exploratory stuff that they were doing just to try to get him on the field. And he didn't flourish as a player until he played weak side linebacker in a 4-3. Now he's not going to do that anymore. So there's still that small question of if they're good enough at that linebacker position. And we're just going to have to see. This is where, as a fan, you have to learn to trust the team and trust the evaluators and say, we will see. But you can have a mental check mark and say, you know what? Wig told me, kind of watch out for this a little bit. This is going to have to improve, and this is going to have to improve because the first quarter of the season we'll see. Don't let us go back to this checklist now and go, yep, that offensive line isn't as good as we thought, and those linebackers haven't figured it out, and they're not as good. Because then what you're going to start doing is you're going to start formulating your mind to free agency in 2022 and the draft in 2022, and you really won't enjoy the 21 season the way you're supposed to. But we enjoy you here every day on the Locked On Jaguars podcast, and I enjoy waking up every morning and listening to Locked On Today with Peter Bukowski. Peter the Great, I call him. He gives it to you like a shot of espresso every single Monday through Friday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and you can subscribe to it on the Odyssey app, where Locked On Today gives you the best shows, the best stories from around sports every single morning and every single day to get your day going so that you know and understand what's going on. And they use local experts from around the country to make sure that you get the information firsthand. And we'll be back here tomorrow like we always are every day. Don't forget to subscribe on the Odyssey app, and you can check us out on Spotify as well and any other place that's not having trouble streaming our shows. And check us out here on the Locked On Podcast Network. As I always tell you, take care of each other, and we'll see you tomorrow here on Locked On Jaguars.